Welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm Matt Robinson. I've been living in Needham for about 6 years, and I've been writing for about 20. In that time, I've published thousands of newspaper and magazine articles. I've done PR and marketing for people all over the world, and people always used to ask me, when are you going to come out with your book? Everybody's got a book, Matt. Where's your book? Well, in August of 2019, I came out with this, Lions, Tigers, and Bulldogs, an unofficial guide to the legends and lore of the Ivy League. It was inspired by my father's time at Brown University. When I was a kid, I would go with him to the football games, and because the football wasn't always that much to watch, I became enamored with the mascot, the brown bear. And so the book has stories about the mascots, the teams, the schools, and the league's history. And it's a fun read. In fact, my favorite review was my 7-year-old daughter, who came up after bedtime one night and said, "Daddy, I read your book. It's good." The problem about writing a book, as far as I can see, though, is that while the end is great and really rewarding, the process can be a real mystery. And that's why I'm so happy and honored to have Dave Zeltserman, one of the best mystery writers around, who is also from Needham, here on the Writer's Block. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Matt.
You have a background in applied math, and were a computer programmer. When did the transition from doing that to being a writer happen, and when did you know that writing could be a path for you?
Okay, in college, my whole life actually, up through college, I was interested in math and computer science. And I always read a lot, but the idea of ever being a writer just seemed impossible. And in college, I probably, I had an engineering degree, and I could maybe take 2 English classes. But I read a lot, and every once in a while I'd try writing, and it was more of a lark, and the stuff I was writing were really just bad imitations of authors I liked. And at some point I tried writing a novel, and I discovered my voice. And I think what caused that was discovering this writer, Jim Thompson, who wrote these really dark, nasty crime noir novels. Right. Where he just broke, and not only he broke every rule in his writing, and seeing that you didn't have to follow any normal conventions, seeing that you could just break rules as long as you could make them work, it helped me find my own voice, and that led to what became my first novel. And also led to my writing my first short story that I wrote for publication. I actually sold my first story, but then trying to sell this novel was tough. Yeah. So I then kicked around with this novel for a while, rewrote it a few times, and I actually sold it first to an Italian publisher. So the novel was first published in Italian before I eventually found a small US publisher for it. And I think this took about 10 years, and in between writing this part-time and getting this published, I wrote a second novel part-time. And that became Bad Thoughts, and that again was a novel that I think I made a lot of improvements in, but I had a lot of trouble publishing that. And that led to taking some time off from even trying to write anymore, and about maybe 5 or 6 years later, I tried writing what became Small Crimes, and that has an interesting story of how it eventually got sold. That novel got rejected by every New York publisher, and probably got rejected by some of them several times. And there was this legendary crime publisher in England called Serpent's Tail, and they were publishing Nobel Prize winners, and they were publishing some very literary crime noir. And I got to know the editor. I got to know several of their writers, and I got to know their editor through a noir reading list that was on the internet back then called, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it doesn't matter. So I had a couple of their writers read the book, and they liked it, and they were recommending it to their editor, and I got to know the editor, and he said, well, I'll give it a look, but the chances of us buying it are about 0. We only buy things that we feel we absolutely love and we can't live without. So I sent it there, and meantime, I'd become friends with Ed Gorman, who was a mystery and horror writer, and he, among other things, had a connection with a mystery imprint called Five Star. And so, you know, after about 6 months of not hearing from Serpent's Tail, I took Ed's advice and I sent it to Five Star. And Five Star wanted to buy it, and they were basically a library publisher, which meant the book would sell maybe 1,000, 2,000 copies to libraries based on how well it did, and they trade reviews, Publishers Weekly, Book List, Library Journal, and it wouldn't be in any bookstores and wouldn't really get any outside reviews. And I didn't really want to sell it to them. I thought the book was too good for that, but you know, after about a year of not hearing from Serpent's Tail, I signed the contract, I put it in the mailbox, and the very next day I got a call from John Williams, the editor at Serpent's Tail, telling us, Dave, we love small crimes. We can't live without it. So then I spent a month negotiating back and forth with Five Star, and they were nice enough to let me trade my book, my second book, Bad Thoughts, for Small Crimes. And so I was able to get this book published, and you know, with a publisher that people would pay attention to. And you know, got some nice reviews. It got a star review in Publishers Weekly. It got, you know, a very nice review in Boston Globe. And then it looked like it was just going to die. It wasn't going to go anywhere. And then a few months later, NPR picked it as the best crime mystery novel of the year, and Washington Post wrote a great review for it. And I started getting calls from different film companies that were interested. And eventually it became a film that's now on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just shows how random the business is. I mean, the book could easily have never been published. And then even after it got published, if it didn't get discovered by Maureen Corrigan at NPR, it probably would have, you know, been read by maybe a couple thousand people and would have disappeared.
Well, for some books, a couple thousand people is a pretty good audience, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned just even with the one book that I've done, there's a lot of waiting, a lot of trying to just, you know, guess who's gonna get back to you when, et cetera. I ended up with my book eventually self-publishing, which is a whole other story. But what do you do when you're waiting? And was there ever a time when you thought maybe this isn't gonna go anymore, and maybe I should go back to programming?
Well, I was, you know, when I was writing the first few books, I was still working as a software engineer, and I'm actually back working as a software engineer.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, what happened was after Small Crimes, you know, got that recognition as, you know, from NPR, and I had a fourth book that I wrote that, again, I had no luck selling. It was called Outsourced, but we had some really strong film interest. And when we got a film deal that from people who were paying a good amount of money just for the option, you know, it seemed like it was going to happen, and I decided, and I'd made some money doing software engineering, and I decided to just, you know, write full time. And this happened around 2008, and then the market melted down, and I actually had to make money with the writing. And so I, you know, during 2008 to 2018, I wrote probably about 17, 18 books.
Wow.
And, you know, I have some more, you know, in Small Crimes. Outsourced never got made. We came awfully close, but you know, it was just like a roller coaster ride. All these things that looked like they were going to happen, then a director would get fired, or an actor who'd signed up would decide he didn't want to do it, or other things would happen, and just as it looked like it was going to get made, it basically died like last year. So that was like a 10-year roller coaster.
Wow.
But in the meantime, we got some more film options, and this book, Caretaker, this is now on its second film company optioning it. The first film company, again, it came awfully close, and probably could have renewed with them. They wanted to renew it, but the director who had signed up to do it decided he wanted to make some bigger movies now, and it would be like several years before he'd be able to get back to it. And I and as luck would have it, about the same time this option was expiring, I had this film company contact me because the screenwriter for Black Swan had discovered this book, loved it, wanted to adapt it.
Wow.
And with him involved, that
Pushed it through a little better.
it allows you to attract, the director allows you to attract the actors, allows you to bring the money in, and all of a sudden this became something that actually seems pretty real. So that was optioned in December, and they have a screenplay, and I think they're excited about it. And I think this one has a really good chance. And I still have another one that is still breathing barely.
Yeah.
But it's like the whole film stuff is random. The book stuff can be random, but
It still seems to be just so personal, so subjective. Like if the editor had a bad day that day and just feeling grumpy, that could
it's
make
also
or break a book.
What you also learn is it comes down to not only what the editor thinks about the book, but whether they think they can market the book,
Right.
Whether they consider the book commercial enough. So you could send them a book that they absolutely love, but if they don't think they can sell enough units, they're going to turn it down. I
Right.
mean, this was something that took me a long time to accept. Just about all the books I wrote were books I really wanted to write, and I wasn't really thinking about trying to write a more formulaic commercial thriller, and that makes it a lot harder.
Yeah. But how do you know, with all the ideas you've had, how do you know which ones to pursue and to try to, breathe life into?
Well, if I was smart, I would have, and I wanted to do it simply to make money, I would have picked the ones that I would have examined the field, understood what makes for a successful commercial thriller, and picked them. Instead, I always wrote the books that I was drawn to write, the books that I felt like I had to write, that were kind of burning inside of me. So what that ended up doing was I ended up writing books I was proud of, but books that would have little chance of being bought by the large publishers. So all my publishers have been independent presses. Now that doesn't mean they were small, like Overlook and Kensington and Serpent Tail. They're all like fairly well capitalized,
Right.
But unfortunately, independent publishers are under tremendous stress these days. The effects of Amazon has, I think, hit them harder than just about anything else. And the whole, since I got Small Crimes published in 2008, the whole publishing industry has changed radically.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different beast than when I even just started 12 years ago.
So do you have contacts that do you have like publishers that you go back to first with new projects, or is it all starting over every time?
Serpent's Tail, for example, after I sold Small Crimes, they got bought by a larger publisher named Profile Books, and they changed their direction. They were able to buy 3 more books of mine, but eventually the publisher and the editor were moved out, and they're no longer publishing the types of stuff I was writing. And then around the same time that I was getting my 4th book published with Serpent's Tail, I started publishing horror novels or supernatural / horror / mix of horror and crime with Overlook Press, and they no longer exist. Mm-hmm. They were bought by Abrams Book for I think their nonfiction list, and I don't even think they publish fiction anymore.
Yeah.
And then I started publishing. I published a thriller series under a pseudonym with Kensington, and then I decided to go back to software engineering.
What prompted using the pseudonym?
They wanted to distinguish between this thriller series with my crime and horror novels, so they wanted it as a marketing, more for marketing than anything else. And I would have preferred putting my own name on the books. I think it would have been better because it makes it really tough to market when you have a pseudonym.
How did you choose the name?
The hero in this thrill series is named Morris Brick, and so I like the idea of using stone, stone and brick. So Stone was going to be the last name, and I let my publisher pick the first name, and they chose Jacob.
How did you let your fans know that it was you?
They didn't necessarily want to keep it a secret, so they publicized that I was writing these as Jacob Stone, and all I could do was really just put on my website. But it just makes it tough. It's just a lot tougher to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rebranding a business, trying to keep them both going.
Yeah.
Now, when you say writing full time, what would a typical day? Was it like the writers who do 1,000 words a day no matter what, or is it sit 8 hours at the typewriter? What's a full day of writing look like?
It would be if I was plotting, it would be trying to get a detailed outline done within a week, and then once I started writing, it would be a minimum of 1,000, but I'd try to go do as much as 2,500. And what I would find is, as I'm getting closer to the end, I would get very anxious to finish a book, and the last few days I'd be doing 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 words.
Wow.
Those days. But as I'm writing, I'm also spending time editing. So I try to, I took it as a full-time job. So I'd be working 10 plus hours a day, doing some of it writing, some of it editing, and some of it research.
Do you have friends or colleagues that you show drafts to?
Yeah, I had a series of writer friends who would, see the first drafts. I'd get comments back. So I'd usually have it sent out to maybe 8 to 10 people and get their feedback. And so the books would be in pretty clean shape by the time I sent them out.
Mm. Yeah, I had another English teacher, another writer, who was working on a book at the same time, and we had a 3 p.m. Friday check-in appointment after we were done teaching for the day. We would write to each other and say, what have you done your outline? Have you done your first 10 pages? Things like that. Because even though, like you said, you have a passion for the idea,
Yeah.
it's a lot of grind, and it can kind of wear you down. So it was nice to have someone kind of keeping an eye on me, someone to answer to, and that really helped a lot. And also just someone who could take a look at a draft and give you their straight opinion.
Right. So what's important is to get people who don't mind telling you it stinks, or telling you where you screwed up and where it needs to be changed.
Well, speaking of which, how do you handle reviews? What do you take criticism well? Do you read the reviews that aren't so positive? I mean, you've been, like you said, NPR, Washington Post. You've had some pretty respected places speak highly of you, but not everyone loves everything.
I mean, all my professional reviews, so all the reviews I've had in newspapers and magazines have all been really good. But yeah, things have changed with Amazon and Goodreads, and everybody's a critic these days.
Yeah.
So it's like the reviews where you just can't let it bother you. It's like but again, I've talked with some. I've had friends who've been in the business for years, who've been New York Times bestsellers and stuff, and they'll tell you like the one bad review. You can get 10 great reviews, and one bad review is what sticks with you.
Yeah.
So it's. I'd say for the most part, you just have to find the humor in it. If somebody's giving away the plot in the book, it can get kind of annoying.
Right.
If they're writing the review to hurt the book, that's a different story. But there's nothing you can do. Again, we live in a time where everybody's a critic, and it'd be really interesting if some of the great writers from yesteryear were living in this era, having to see like 30% negative reviews of their books on Amazon, and see how they would respond.
Yeah, I'm sure, like if I let my English students review the books that I'm supposed to be teaching them, the curriculum would change drastically. What about your characters? Who are some of your favorite characters that you've created, and what goes into making a character for you?
Okay, most of my books, up until my mystery thriller series with Kensington, or crime thriller series, were standalone books. But I did write a series of short stories for Ellery Queen, or I'm still writing them, based on this Neil Wolfe pastiche called Julie's Cats. And this started off as kind of like an accidental series where I wrote one, and the story ended up winning the Seamus Award and ended up being picked by Ellery Queen readers as their third favorite story of the year. And
Wow.
so I had to keep writing them, and then the second one was picked as their favorite story of the year. And so these stories are just fun, and they're fun to write, and they're tough to write because they're puzzles. Like a crime noir is actually much easier because it's just bad stuff compounding and just making the situation tougher and tougher for your protagonist until it looks like there's almost no hope. Then there's some hope, and then the bottom falls out. With these, you're building kind of an intricate puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together and all the clues have to make sense, and the mystery has to be challenging, but also not cheating.
Right.
And so these stories are actually narrated by Julius's sidekick, which is a 2-inch by 4-inch tie pin that he wears. That's actually a very advanced piece of technology with a neuron network that can self-learn, and he's kind of thinks of himself as when he imagines himself as a short, balding guy, kind of like the Continental Op, and he has a heart and soul of a hard-boiled PI, even though he's a piece of technology. He's a bit of a smart ass. So writing him and having him narrate is just a lot of fun.
How many things are you typically working on at the same time? What are you working on now?
Right now, I've just sent in my latest Julie's Cat story to Ellery Queen, and when I get a response, assuming they buy it, I'll be starting a next one. So I'm kind of in now that I'm working full time, my output's going to be more like 2 or 3 stories a year as opposed to 2 or 3 books a year and half a dozen stories. But when I was writing full time, I'd work on one thing at a time. So I'd work on a novel till I finished it. Then I'd write several short stories. Then I'd work on another novel till I finished it, and work on several short stories. And it would take me an average of about 3 to 4 months to write a novel.
Wow.
And it would take anywhere from a few days to a couple of weeks to write a short story, depending on how complex it was.
Right.
So.
Where's the best way for people to keep track of, find out more about you, and to keep track of what you're up to?
It's a good question. I got rid of my website now that I'm working full time.
Oh, okay.
I do have a blog. I think I call it Small Crimes blogspot.com.
Okay. Smallcrimes@blogspot.com.
I think that's what it's called. I'm not
Okay.
100% sure. So I keep, or you can connect with me on Facebook. So I'll just put updates when there's a new project or
Right.
a new story published or
Okay.
something.
It's under your real name, Dave Zeltserman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I'd like to thank Dave Zeltserman for stopping by at the Writer's Block. I'm Matt Robinson, and if you want to find out more about my writing, I'm at therobinsonreporter.com, and thanks for joining us.